I think we can turn to our guest. If he is Maximo, if you are connected, Maximo.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. I can
you
hear you. I would love to see. I can see you.
Perfect. Nice to see you.
Excellent. Perfect. If you're blurring your background, if I could ask you to unblur it, because otherwise.
No, it's not blurred. It's the background.
Okay, it's not. You're just.
Not a background. It's my window.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. As long as you're not blurred, we're good. So I will leave you the floor, and then we'll take some questions. And welcome back.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here. And today I'm going to report about the FAO Food Price Index, which fell for the fourth consecutive month in July, after reaching an all-time high in March of this year, since the FAO began publishing monthly figures in January 1990. This decline was the steepest monthly fall in the index since October 2008. The vegetable oil index registered the sharpest decline, dropping by 19.2%, followed by the cereal price index by 11.5%. All other three categories in the index, sugar, dairy, and meat, also declined, but to a lesser extent. Despite all these declines, the overall index was down by only 12% from its peak reached in March this year, and it exceeded its value in July 2021 by 13%. So still, prices are at a high level, higher than July in the percentage I mentioned before. What are the key drivers of the decline that we see in July 2022? First, vegetable oils fell to a 10-month low amid declines across all key vegetable oil prices, with the palm oil price decline triggered by the prospect of ample export availabilities from Indonesia, while soy, rapeseed, and sunflower oil prices fell mainly on subdued demand, a result of the demand rationing due to the high prices prevail. Prices across all key cereals types also fell, reflecting the combination of factors, including the imminent resumption of grain export from Ukraine following the agreement reached between Ukraine and the Russian Federation to unlock Ukraine's main Black Sea ports, which you already have heard also today of the progress, and increased seasonal availability also from ongoing wheat harvest in the Northern Hemisphere, and rising seasonal supplies from Argentina and Brazil led to maize price to decline, while spillover effects from weak wheat prices affected sorghum and barley quotations. Rice price also declined, which is excellent news, was influenced by inconsistent demand and currency movements in the major exporters. Sugar price also fell to a 5-month low on concerns of demand prospects due to the expectations of further slowdowns of global economy in 2022 and weakening of the Brazilian real against the United States dollar and increased export availability from key producing regions, mainly Brazil and India. Dairy prices weakened, mainly reflecting lackluster market activities in Europe, not uncommon during the summer holidays. Despite the decline, prices remain high due to tight global supplies from both Europe and Oceania. And meat prices also fell the least as price declines in bovine, pig, and ovine meats were compensated by increased poultry meat prices, which reached an all-time high amid high global demand and tight supplies. So the decline from very high food commodity prices is welcome, but many uncertainties remain, including still high fertilizer prices that impact farmers' livelihoods and future production prospects for the next year, and the global economic outlook and currency movements, all of which pose ongoing constraints for the global food security. Lower crude oil prices are also a welcome sign, which could lead to a considerable downward pressure on food commodities, but uncertainties over gas availability, which prices are still increasing, are important and could destabilize still the fertilizer market and the feed supplies. Let me stop there and be more happy to answer any question.
Thank you very much, Maximo, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. How optimistic are you that this downward trend is going to continue for the rest of the year? And what impact are both floods and drought playing in any forecasting?
Thank you so much for the question. So I think we need to understand that the agricultural sector moves under substantial uncertainties and risks. So as you correctly said, any shock of weather in a key exporting country like Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, or Uruguay could change this forecast. Up to now, the forecasts that we're observing are positive. I am extremely happy to see that rice is doing well, which is a very sensitive commodity, especially for the most vulnerable countries. But also the good news, which are important to note, is that because of the movement of grain, especially of cereals and wheat, especially out of Ukraine, that is helping and the market is absorbing that increase in supplies. Now, we also need to look at three dimensions. The first dimension is that the movement out of the grains is more food availability, but not necessarily assures that the grain goes to the most vulnerable people. And that's where we need to bring complementary measures to help that. The second is that the gap of wheat in the world today with respect to last year was 3 million metric tons. So if more grain is moved out than the 3 million metric tons, that could even decrease more the prices. And that's where we also need to look carefully at the side of the producers, especially the poorest ones, because they are already paying high cost of inputs. So prices could fall too much and that could affect them. And the third element is how we can assure that we resolve the problem of fertilizer, which is still a latent problem. So many dimensions are still there, but at least things are starting to improve and prices are at a better level now than before.
Thank you. Edward?
Hi, Mr. Torero. This is Dojo Shu with China Central Television. Basically, I have two questions. First, we know that the Black Sea Grain Initiative started, and the first ship will arrive in Tripoli in Lebanon maybe just 2 days later. How long do you think the real impact would this initiative started to have on the market? That's my first question. And second question, we knew this year actually, no matter WFP or FAO, suspended some operations, especially in African countries, due to the high price of food and lack of funding. Are there any plans for FAO or, if you knew this, WFP, to resume some of those programs probably because of the drop of the price? Thank you.
Thank you. So regarding the first question, how long it will take for the impact to happen? Look, markets respond to expectations, and market responds very quickly. So the day the agreement was arrived, future prices start to decline. Then they come a little bit more, and now with the movement of the first vessel, which is a vessel of maize, essentially for feed, which is important because that affects animal feed, of course, and affect the cost of animal products, prices start to fall even more. So the market is already absorbing that, okay? The issue here is how much time it will take. Today, the capacity of the three ports is around 70,000 metric tons per day. So it will depend on how much the process of vessels moving accelerates. And again, I think the markets will immediately start to absorb as soon as they see more movement. Another element which is important is the insurance, which was extremely high, but the private sector insurance companies have agreed to support that so that ships can move with lower cost of insurance. And that has helped and facilitated the process. The second question regarding operations, FAO didn't stop operations in the countries that we are operating in the food crisis countries and even inside Ukraine. Of course, there are pledges on board. And WFP, I think, up to what I understand, they had certain constraints because of the significant increase in prices. And that's why the importance of the funding. But the major concern, and where we need to really focus, is that for the most vulnerable countries, the 62 more vulnerable countries, which are the countries that are net food importers and have balance of payments problems and cannot have access to loans, the food import bill has increased in $24.5 billion. And that's where we need support to them so that, as I said before, the more availability of grain is complemented with giving access to these most vulnerable countries to purchase this grain, of course, at a lower price. And for that, in the case of FAO, we are proposing the food import financing facility, which we hope the IMF could pick up so that we can help that process to assure that also there is more food access for the most vulnerable countries.
Thank you. Kristen?
Thank you. Kristen Salumi from Al Jazeera. I'm wondering, you talked about the need to get more fertilizer on the market. How might a lack of fertilizer impact food production globally? Are you concerned that there could be food shortages globally as a result of fertilizer not getting out? And what is the time frame for something like that? Here in the United States, it's a peak growing season. I don't know how that relates globally, but yeah, if your thoughts on that would be appreciated. Thanks.
Oh, exactly. So what we are concerned and what we were always mentioning is that for the next season, the 2022-2023, of course, the significant increase in price of fertilizers, especially nitrogen, because of the increase in natural gas and because of the restriction of exports by Russian Federation, which is the first exporter of nitrogen in the world, the second on phosphorus and the third on potassium, put a constraint and reduce affordability of farmers. And that, of course, could affect the potential planting and the potential yields for the next season. The situation, what will be the most dramatic situation? We know more or less today that the production of Ukraine could be reduced between 40% to 60%, because there is also switching of farmers from wheat and maize towards sunflower, which is more profitable for them, given the tough conditions they are operating. We also know that Russia Federation could also have some problems to move their commodity. And if to that you add for next year the potential reduction of yields because of the lack of access to fertilizer, that will have a potential impact in the levels of availability of food, not only of food access like this year, but also in the levels of availability of food for the next season. Now, what we are observing in the last months is that fertilizers have started to move. Key exporting countries have been able to procure a significant share of what they need, but still the major problem is the affordability. And that's the concern, and that is directly linked to natural gas prices. So that's something that still gives us a kind of an orange light for the next season if this is not resolved as soon as possible. And the window is getting shorter, as you said, in the case of the US and the northern continents, is getting shorter every day. So we need to accelerate this process as possible.
Thank you. All right, any more questions or any questions online? Okay, Maximo, thank you very much for your time. You're always welcome to be here. And just a reminder for people in the room, we will have the head of the CTBTO at 1 p.m. Maximo, thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you so much.